promotion for some of the partners on my channel. And on the other side of that, we'll come back and jump in with the Amir Mansour versus Gerald Washington, and we'll follow up with the other points I laid out earlier. Hold on just a second.
Going for Two, your number one source for fantasy sports with top-notch fantasy sports advice, an exclusive community forum, and some of the best and most knowledgeable writers in fantasy sports. Visit today at going42.com. That's going for the number 2.com. Going for Two features NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and more. And they also provide the best advice for your FanDuel, DraftKings, or daily fantasy sports site. Sign up for the Going for Two newsletter and get updates immediately through your email. And while you're on the site, make sure you check out the exclusive section, Why I Hate. That's going42.com, GOINGFOR, the number 2. Going42.com. Go visit and get the inside scoop of everything fantasy sports.
All right, we're back. Pay me no mind. This is your host, Wood. I'm on with my special guest, James. We're talking boxing. And quick note, I just put up my first article today for a partner site, goingfor2.com. Kind of excited to see how that happens. You know, I'll get a link out there later on Twitter and try to promote that a little bit. Just trying to expand, everything that I'm doing. So, like I said, I'm excited to see how that goes down. Hope to get some questions in or just some feedback of any kind. So, James, man, we get, like you said, it's several fights this week. Down from flyweights up to some light heavyweights, maybe. Oh, actually, the heavyweights, which is our first one that we'll be getting into. What's your thoughts on this Gerald Washington, Amir Mansour showdown?
Yeah, that's an interesting fight. Now, I got to say, I haven't seen Gerald Washington. You can catch him on YouTube. Interesting looking guy. I can't call him a prospect. He's 33 years old, but he's 6'6", 250 or so. Generally, when he enters the ring, of course, there's no limit for the heavyweights. He could come in at anything he wants, but so he's about a Klitschko size. Amir Mansour, we've seen him on TV a bunch. We saw him fight Steve Cunningham. He's been on TV a bunch recently. Now, he's actually older than anyone might think. He's 43. He hasn't really been in the public eye for very long, so he may seem younger. He's ripped. He looks younger than he is. So this is a fight clearly that Washington's people thinks he can win. That's why they put him in there. Mansour's got great power, and Washington's got about a 5-inch height advantage. So he's got that reach. That's about how it shapes up.
I'm a little concerned because Mansour is he's southpaw for one. I'm not sure if Washington's faced any southpaws yet. But I watched Amir Mansour fight Steve Cunningham, and his defensive style, kind of being able to tilt his body or lean his body back extraordinarily more so than many fighters that I've watched. And Cunningham really couldn't put a solid lick on him. So he just seems like a very hard puzzle for Washington to be able to solve at this point in his journey in the game of boxing. So, like you said, the 5-inch height advantage, maybe that will play in his favor. But I mentioned to you earlier on Twitter before we got on air that I'm wondering if there's some concern along the lines of kind of watching how things kind of quickly or abruptly unfolded for Seth Mitchell in his quest to move over from college football to the world of boxing. Like you said, I haven't seen Gerald to this point either, but Mansour, like you said, he's a pretty interesting guy to face.
Great power. He's gonna look to land a big right hook. Maybe against a tough guy like that, an overhand left. He's gonna jab his way in, maybe throw some body shots, get him to bring against guard. I think that Washington's got to try to fight the typical big guy fight. Just reading about him, he said that he's trying to model himself off Lennox Lewis, which is exactly the way he needs to approach this fight. Think like Lennox Lewis versus David Tua. Mansour's a little taller than Tua, but just keeping him out there with that jab, throwing some straight rights, keeping it simple. As you mentioned, he came from that football background, which means he got a very late start. They must be trying to accelerate him. At 33, he can't be hanging around fighting soft touches for years to come. It's, the time is now for him. This is probably a pretty risky fight. It's really hard to overcome, from we've seen from so many guys, it's really hard to overcome not boxing your whole life.
Right.
Mansour, actually, though, that might not be much.
Are you there? You there, James? All right, so I lost James briefly. Got him back on the line, and we'll continue on. One thing that I was mentioning about Seth Mitchell was once he stepped up, like you said, with Gerald Washington being a little longer in the tooth and him possibly being rushed, once Seth Mitchell got up to the upper echelon of fighters, and even Jonathan Banks not really being a top tier guy, but he was TKO'd in the second round by him. Did you watch the rematch of Banks and Mitchell?
I did. It was awful.
Yeah, he Banks turned right around and had him in trouble in the first round, in the second round, in that one, and then it was like Banks for some reason took his foot off the gas, and Seth Mitchell was able to get a unanimous decision win. But then he went right back in, and I felt like, to face a fighter like Areola, who just jumped on him and, just totally had zero respect for him as a fighter. And I think that's just, to finish out my point on it, I just wonder if Washington and some of these guys that get that late start, if you can really have that aggression that a boxer really needs.
Yeah. Well, Mitchell found out, he couldn't take a heavyweight punch, and being a heavyweight, that was a huge problem for him. The Banks fight was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. As you just mentioned, he was, looked like he was gonna, take up where he had left off, and then taking his foot off the pedal, was putting it mildly for about 8 or 10 rounds. I can't remember how many rounds the fight was now. It's probably 10. For 8 rounds, he barely threw a punch after that. It was very strange. He never explained it. As far as I saw, I don't know what he was doing. So yeah, we'll find out. Can Washington take a punch? Can he beat this level of fighter? I don't know that he can. Mansour is a good heavyweight in this landscape. Not great, but good. I believe they had a common opponent. They both fought Gavin, Jason Gavin. Mansour took him out in a round. Washington beat him in an 8-round decision. I don't know if there's anything to learn from that. They both beat Jason Gavin. So it will be interesting to see. We'll learn a lot about Gerald Washington, and if it doesn't go well, we may never hear from him again.
Do you even know? I know, and before we move on, I know Seth Mitchell was part of that heavyweight factory or something they called it. Do you even know if that's still in operation or whatnot?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, ever since Mitchell's, ever since things kind of unfolded for him, I really haven't heard anything else from that organization. But I guess it was an organization that was their objective, was to give former or athletes in other walks of life, I think primarily football, I think it was trying to get them into the fight game, and it probably just became.
Yeah.
It was like
I don't know if they're still around, but if Mitchell was their star in their test case, it didn't probably help them. Not that he was a bad fighter or anything. He's actually really fun to watch, likable guy, but he's probably just going to get knocked out against anybody halfway decent. Is what began to become clear.
Right. Moving on, man. One name that, and me and I think we were maybe on the same level as far as our awareness of him, but I just had some thoughts on Roman Gonzalez. I went to go check out the pound for pound rankings now that Floyd is, retired or whatever he is. But and I just thought it was.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, we can get into that in a future show.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I just realized. I mean, I clicked on the pound for pound list, and I was kind of shocked that Roman Gonzalez is the top guy, and at flyweight. And so I went and checked out a couple of fights of his this week. One being against Sosa, and another one being against Soto. Both of them second round knockouts. And what's your thoughts on him? I mean, is his size gonna undermine him ever, becoming a household name, or is there a chance, that he maybe gets on the track that a younger Manny Pacquiao was on?
Well, at his his current weight class, it's going to hold him back, particularly in the U.S., where everybody really wants to be fighting, but people in the U.S. don't really care for the really small fighters. He's at flyweight. Can he take it all the way up to 135, 147 in that range where where the money is? I don't know. I don't know if he's built for that. He's a very short guy. I saw him on HBO fight Edgar Sosa. I think that was on HBO. And he looked great. I mean, he looked absolutely terrific. Valoria has a puncher's chance against him, probably is the consensus. Gonzalez is a big favorite. But I don't. From a marketability standpoint, it's going to be tough for him at his weight class. Unless in his home country of I think it's Nicaragua. Unless he's able to make a lot of money there, or in other countries, hold him back.
Yeah, it seems like in this country, I mean, you're pressing it once you get to 140. The interest kind of disappears. Although we have some pretty talented featherweights right now, and I don't know, that's probably as high as this guy can probably get is to 126 pounds. I mean, we have Lomachenko there, Nicholas Walters, I think Gary Russell Jr. is around there. So I just I really appreciated watching the guy. I really like finding or coming across fighters with different styles, and he just seemed to have kind of whereas like Fortuna is like really wild and unorthodox and kind of out of control, or it's kind of a controlled fury, I guess. But Gonzalez seems to be a little wild, but he's even more controlled.
Yeah, and what is interesting about him is his chance, I guess, if he has a chance to become a household name at that weight, is that he has really unusual power, at flyweight.
Right.
37 knockouts and 43 fights. I don't know the history, but I don't think you see that.
Yeah, that does jump off the page at you.
That's like a heavyweight knockout percentage.
Exactly.
High 80s.
Hey, let me get your opinion on what is this country's fixation with heavyweight? I mean, I know the big knockouts are there. I understand that any moment of a fight can end, but I kind of became I wasn't really enamored with heavyweights probably right after Lewis's era, because it seemed like guys just got bigger and bigger, and they just came in the ring. They weren't able to move as gracefully. They didn't throw a lot of punches. It just seems like once the heavyweight fighters got away from being around 220, 225, maybe 230, I just thought it was less action, and it was guys just mainly looking for that one punch. And I just feel like all of the skill is really being displayed down at 147, maybe middleweight, and even 168 is a very exciting division for me. So what's America's fixation on heavyweights?
Yeah, and light heavy right now is a terrific division.
Right, I agree.
4 or 5 real good guys. I think it's more of a historical perspective, and I think you absolutely nailed it. When heavyweights were